actually Drake's lawsuit is dangerous. What we're trying to focus on is the impacts that this case could have in the long run. Drake is hemorrhaging an incredible amount of money. The lawyers, a private investigator trying to get Lucian's phone. Here's some of the juicy stuff we normally don't get to see until the actual trial. There is so much happening. And there's one thing I found that no one else has reported on that I think is huge. Has anyone considered what's going to happen if Drake wins his defamation lawsuit? I'm talking about from the standpoint of censorship by music distributors, and also the impact on rap lyrics, rap battle culture. The reality is that Drake's defamation lawsuit could be a much bigger deal than people realize. So I was going through the court's docket today. I was looking at all the new things that have been filed in the lawsuit because there is so much happening. And there's one thing I found that no one else has reported on that I think is huge. And that has to do with the allegation that actually Drake's lawsuit is dangerous. So look, recap. Drake files this defamation lawsuit in January of this year. And the lawsuit is in regards to Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us song, but it's not against Kendrick, it's against his record label, Universal. Now, obviously, Universal's role in this is to distribute Kendrick's music, get it promoted, and then, oh, by the way, Universal is also the label for Drake. So then what's happened since then is that ultimately Drake amended his complaint. He added in a bunch of stuff. He actually took out some stuff as well. And Universal has filed a motion to dismiss. In their motion to dismiss, they say, essentially, this was a rap battle. And these rap battle lyrics are hyperbole, right? They're exaggeration. Everyone knows that to be the case. And so Drake over here pretending like these are facts, pretending that he hasn't participated in and actually coaxed it himself. Well, with all that, Universal says, because of all those reasons, Judge, we want you to throw out the entire case. So then fast forward to August, here we go. This is not the biggest thing that caught my eye, but one of the updates had to do with the CEO of Universal, Lucian Grain. It could be Grenache. I'm going with Grain. So essentially, Drake's team served discovery and was like, we want to see everything that's on your phone as far as communications, relevant to the contracts that you did with these artists, the negotiations. And Lucian, well, I should say Universal on behalf of Lucian, came back and is like, absolutely not. So that's one fight that's going on right now. I heard someone describe this. He's like, the fact that they're trying to get Lucian's phone to see all of his conversations and his private pictures and his private everything. And I go, that's not quite how it works. So as an actual litigation attorney, I can tell you that both sides are legally entitled to ask for anything that they think is going to help in the claims or the defenses. But it doesn't mean you can't have a fight and say, no, I don't want to give it up, which is kind of what's happening right now. All right, so that's one. Another update that happened had to do with a key witness, and the judge said, okay, on serving this key witness, and this is kind of interesting. The key witness is Kojo Asamoah, and Drake is alleging that Asamoah has knowledge over the tactics of the boosting of numbers. Remember, that's a big piece of this. He goes, not only did you, Universal, participate in the defamation against me, you've caused me damages, and you put me in a dangerous situation where people are coming onto my property, opening fire, as in gunfire. But a part of his overall allegations is that Universal has been juicing the numbers and making Not Like Us appear to be a whole lot more popular than it actually was. And my whole thing on this was, well, it kind of sounds like you probably know what Universal is doing as business practices to market, to promote its artists because you're one of them. And so part of the question was, well, is Universal doing something different with this particular song, or are they doing what they normally do for all of their big artists on the roster? Now, regardless of where you guys fall on this, whether you're team Drake or team Kendrick Lamar or team Universal, what we're trying to focus on here is the impacts that this case could have in the long run. So anyway, back to this key witness. They were having such a hard time serving this witness the subpoena. And in fact, they had 11 failed attempts and spent on a private investigator $75,000. And so in the realm of Drake is hemorrhaging an incredible amount of money right now on this case, on the lawyers, on, well, a private investigator. I mean, spending almost 6 figures to find one person to just serve a paper on. Well, they did get what's called alternative service. So they're like, we went to all the addresses, and I think the allegation is that this person is avoiding service. So they're like, judge, we want to mail it. We want to put it, stamp it on the front door. And the judge said yes. So that's the second update. Now here's the biggest one that caught my eye. And this had to do with the accusation that what Drake is doing in saying rap lyrics are factual is dangerous had to do with what's called an amicus brief. So there were a bunch of experts that got together from the University of California, and they sent this summary right, this brief to the judge. And you can do this in these cases where you're not actually on either side of the case, right? You're not one of the parties, but you send something that you feel is very important for the judge to know or take into account for the decision making and the outcome of the case. Now, here's some of the juicy stuff we normally don't get to see until the actual trial, like the end of the case. And they came in, they're like, oh, we're just going to cut the line and go straight to the judge. All right, and here it is, identified as a brief of scholars. Okay, and then writing out, we have Chris, Jack, Adam, Kyle. And who are they? Well, they identify themselves as nationally recognized experts on the use of rap lyrics in court. They are criminologists, scholars of criminal justice, freedom of expression, and intellectual property, otherwise identified as amici. So they are experts on rap music and its use in judicial court proceedings, and they provide the court with, well, their thoughts on the matter. Drake's defamation claim rests on the assumption that every word of "not like us" shall be taken literally as a factual representation. This assumption is not just faulty, it's dangerous. This is a civil case, right? It's not criminal. But in criminal cases, this same discussion comes up about if you are on trial for your life and the prosecutor is going to the lyrics of your music to try to prove you're a real bad guy, or otherwise you committed maybe the crime that you're accused of because they're saying, well, you admitted it in your music. In the same kind of way, how are lyrics to be treated in the civil context? So that's what they're addressing here. When rap lyrics are admitted, it is admitted to as evidence, it is because they are treated as literal. This in turn opens the door to racial bias, stereotype in the courtroom, as empirical studies have demonstrated. Treating rap lyrics as literal also threatens First Amendment speech protections, and the practice already has created a demonstrable chilling effect across the industry. All right, so our experts go on to say, courts frequently misinterpret rap lyrics as literal statements of fact, overlooking rap's distinct conventions arising from both historical traditions and intense market pressures. These misinterpretations, which can amount to criminalization of rap lyrics, pose a serious threat to artistic expression. So then pointing to two key elements that make rap lyrics really problematic, especially in the judicial process. One, stage names and public personas are a defining feature of the genre. So they say rap artists routinely create fictionalized characters under which they perform. They go, Marshall Mathers performs as Eminem, Jeffrey Williams performs as Young Thug, and so on. Rap artists often create a hyper-masculine, street-hardened persona for their musical careers because such personas lead to greater commercial success. Are you saying they're a bunch of fakesters? But these personas rarely represent real-life identities. When asked about his song, High All the Time, Curtis James Jackson III, professionally known as 50 Cent, explained, I don't drink and I don't use drugs, and I didn't back then either. I put that joint on the first record because I saw artists consistently selling 500,000 with that content. I will say that I've had a lot of clients who have found success and they have common origin stories, and they go, I was doing a lot of stuff about drugs and sex and whatever, and I felt like I had to. And then they found some kind of new, different path, something that was micro niche. And my general rule as an artist is you should never do anything that is not authentic to you, regardless of the pressure, regardless of the assumptions that are made. Even as rap artists fabricate criminal personas, they also strive to appear authentic and proclaim they are keeping it real, but keeping it real doesn't mean lyrics should be taken as fact. Second, braggadocio, hyperbole, right? So exaggerating, and competitive wordplay are among rap's most defining artistic practice. As Amici discussed below, these characteristics define rap battles and diss tracks where exaggeration and lyrical cleverness take precedent over the truth. Rappers use these battles to showcase their lyrical skills, focusing on creative insults designed to entertain and impress their audience. All right, so in other words, a part of this artistic expression is the verbal sparring. And actually saying a diss track, as vicious as it is, as graphic as it is, as hyperbolic as it is, the lyrics themselves are usually containing accusations of bad conduct, right? Illegal behavior. That is what encompasses this. It's exaggeration, it's insults, and it's lyrics that are hitting below the belt. Going on to say, because of its rawness, battling is sometimes criticized as embodying the worst of violence, misogyny that rap is accused of promoting. But battle rap is not a corruption of Black culture. It is the modern incarnation of long-held oral, competitive, and communal traditions that are seen throughout the African American experience. Going on to talk about how Jay-Z, DMX, Eminem all got their start in battling. Then going on to talk about how rap battling over time has just evolved. It went from freestyling to now more non-improvised versus composed and otherwise known today as diss tracks. And so they go on to also talk about Azalea Banks, Eve, Foxy Brown, Lil' Kim. All of them were actually threatening physical harm to their competitors. And so talking about violent things they wanted to do to each other or otherwise inciting violence, talking about killing, shooting, stabbing competitors. Diss tracks by famous artists draw the attention of hundreds of millions of people, even those who are not hip-hop fans, which was a part of what Drake argued, right? So he goes, especially with the Super Bowl halftime performance and just some of these additional places that the song was played, he goes, even to your argument that everyone knows that it's hyperbole and this is just a rap battle beef, his argument is this is now so widespread that people who are outside that bubble of knowing are now just going to think of me as a Pedialyte, and it has done irreparable harm to my reputation. But the experts for this brief go on to say diss tracks over time, the audiences will learn the details about the insults, the attacks, the track, they analyze them, they choose sides, they discuss them. And so in short, the exchange of diss tracks, quote, presumes the audience possesses prior knowledge of the rap music, predominant artists, and their histories and rivalries. Indeed, rappers are aware that victories depends not on factual accuracy, but on the salience of their metaphors and images, as well as on the audience's ability to make these context-dependent connections. So, AKA, there is so much more context that goes into these rap battles. It's not that simple. And going back to my original question of what is going to be the effect when it comes to music distributors? If ultimately, let's say Drake is successful, then the result is that if you are a music distributor and you allow how much of a diss track, right? One sentence that was defamatory, two sentences that were defamatory, you now could be held liable as the music distributor for the words that were said that you allowed to go through your system. And then conversely, if there is no allowance made for what these diss tracks are, then there's going to be a significant chilling effect of what has been very commonplace rap culture for a long time. But if you remember, I mentioned this in the criminal context, and actually the legislation for restoring artistic protection, so the RAP Act, was reintroduced. So this has again to do with criminal trials, but basically saying it changes the rules of evidence in federal courtrooms. So lyrics are now inadmissible unless the prosecutor can say, no, this is literally an admission of what he did, rather than just being like, he's such a bad guy and he talks about being a bad guy all the time. Well, pursuant to these experts, they say, well, pretending to be a bad guy or inflating the things that he does is part of the persona and should not be taken literally. And going all the way back to the beginning of this, if Drake is saying, no, you need to take these words quite literally, some critics point at Drake and say, well, what about your words that you said to Kendrick? If we're going to take those quite literally, what about those words? So is this protecting free expression? Is it avoiding racial bias? And if the hope is protecting individuals in their creative artistry, what do we do here? Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts.